The conference room at St. Mary's Hospital buzzed with the usual pre-meeting chatter when 7-year-old Tommy walked in, clutching his mother's hand with unusual intensity. The quarterly pediatric psychology meeting had been routine until Dr. Sarah Chen mentioned an unusual case she wanted to discuss with her colleagues. What started as professional curiosity would soon become the most unsettling experience of their medical careers. Tommy had been having vivid dreams and making strange claims for months. According to his mother, Jennifer, he would wake up screaming about being in a white coat, working in a hospital that looked exactly like St. Mary's, and insisting he had been a doctor who died in a car accident 3 years ago. The claims seemed typical of childhood imagination until Tommy began describing medical procedures with startling accuracy and mentioning specific areas of the hospital he had never visited. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, the chief of pediatrics, barely looked up from his notes as Jennifer explained her son's behavior. The assembled doctors, Dr. Chen, Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Patricia Williams, Dr. James Foster, and Dr. Maria Santos, had heard countless stories of children's vivid imaginations. Dr. Foster even chuckled softly, muttering something about children watching too much television. The atmosphere was one of polite skepticism, mixed with barely concealed amusement. Jennifer's voice trembled as she continued. Tommy had been describing memories of performing surgeries, knowing the layout of the hospital's restricted areas, and even mentioning specific patient cases. The doctors exchanged knowing glances, their expressions a mixture of pity for the concerned mother and professional dismissal of what they considered elaborate childhood fantasy. Dr. Williams leaned forward, her tone gentle but patronizing. She explained how children often create elaborate stories, especially when seeking attention or processing confusing information they might have overheard. The other doctors nodded in agreement, already mentally moving on to more pressing medical cases that required their attention. Then Tommy spoke for the first time since entering the room. His voice was quiet but startlingly mature for a 7-year-old. He looked directly at Dr. Rodriguez and said he remembered working in this exact hospital, in the cardiac surgery department on the 4th floor. The doctor's polite smiles faltered slightly as Tommy described the layout of the surgical wing with perfect accuracy, including details about the scrub room configuration that had been renovated only recently. Dr. Santos tried to rationalize the boy's knowledge, suggesting he might have visited the hospital before or overheard conversations. But Tommy continued speaking, his small voice growing more confident as he described specific medical equipment, the smell of the antiseptic they used in surgery, and even the particular brand of surgical gloves the cardiac team preferred. The room grew quieter as Tommy's descriptions became increasingly specific. He mentioned the small coffee stain on the wall near the 4th floor elevator that had never been painted over, the way the surgical lights in OR3 flickered slightly when fully extended, and the fact that the cardiac surgery team always played classical music during operations, preferring Mozart over Bach. Dr. Chen felt a chill run down her spine as she realized she had never mentioned any of these details to anyone outside the surgical team. The coffee stain was something they joked about privately, and the preference for Mozart was a quirk known only to those who worked closely with the cardiac surgery department. Tommy paused, looking around the room at the increasingly uncomfortable faces of the medical professionals. Then he said something that made Dr. Rodriguez drop his pen. The boy claimed that in his previous life, his name had been Dr. David Mitchell, and he had died on Highway 101 during a rainstorm while rushing back to the hospital for an emergency surgery. The silence in the room was deafening. Dr. Foster's face had gone completely pale, and Dr. Williams looked as if she had seen a ghost. Dr. Santos gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white with tension. None of them had mentioned Dr. David Mitchell to the boy or his mother. In fact, they rarely spoke about their deceased colleague even among themselves. Dr. David Mitchell had been a brilliant cardiac surgeon at St. Mary's Hospital. 3 years ago, on a rainy November evening, he had died in a car accident on Highway 101 while racing back to the hospital to perform an emergency procedure on a child who needed immediate heart surgery. The loss had devastated the entire cardiac surgery team, and they had collectively decided to keep his memory private, rarely discussing him with others. Dr. Rodriguez's hand shook as he asked Tommy how he knew that name. The boy looked at him with eyes that seemed far too old for his young face and began recounting memories that only Dr. Mitchell could have known. He described Dr. Mitchell's habit of humming Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 21 while scrubbing in, his ritual of touching the small scar on his left thumb for luck before every surgery, and his secret fear of disappointing patients' families. Tommy continued with details that made the doctors increasingly uncomfortable. He mentioned Dr. Mitchell's private office on the 3rd floor, which had been locked and left untouched since his death. He described the family photo on the desk, Dr. Mitchell's wife and 2 daughters at a beach in California, and the small ceramic owl that Dr. Mitchell's youngest daughter had made in art class, which sat on the bookshelf behind his chair. Dr. Chen realized she was holding her breath as Tommy described Dr. Mitchell's final day with haunting accuracy. The boy spoke about feeling rushed and anxious, about a difficult surgery that had run longer than expected, and about the phone call that had summoned Dr. Mitchell back to the hospital. He even mentioned the patient, a 6-year-old girl named Emma who needed emergency heart surgery after a playground accident. The detail that finally broke Dr. Foster's composure was when Tommy mentioned Dr. Mitchell's last conversation with him. Dr. Foster had been the last person to speak with Dr. Mitchell before he left the hospital that fatal night. They had discussed the emergency case, and Dr. Mitchell had expressed concern about performing the surgery while tired. Dr. Foster had offered to call in another surgeon, but Dr. Mitchell had insisted he could handle it. Tommy recounted this conversation with perfect accuracy, including Dr. Foster's exact words of encouragement and Dr. Mitchell's response. Jennifer watched in amazement as the medical professionals who had been dismissive moments earlier now sat in stunned silence. Dr. Williams asked Tommy if he remembered anything else about Dr. Mitchell's life, her voice barely above a whisper. The boy nodded and began describing Dr. Mitchell's childhood, his medical school experiences, and even his proposal to his wife on a bridge in San Francisco. Dr. Santos, who had worked most closely with Dr. Mitchell, was visibly shaken as Tommy described private conversations they had shared about difficult cases and professional challenges. The boy knew about Dr. Mitchell's struggle with a particular type of valve repair surgery that he had been working to perfect, and about his plans to publish a research paper on innovative cardiac procedures. The doctors found themselves asking questions they never thought they would ask a 7-year-old child. How did Tommy know about Dr. Mitchell's coffee order from the hospital cafeteria? Why could he describe the exact layout of Dr. Mitchell's home office, including the medical journals stacked on the left side of his desk? How did he know about the small birthmark on Dr. Mitchell's shoulder that was never visible unless he was changing into scrubs? As the meeting stretched on, the medical professionals struggled to find rational explanations for Tommy's impossible knowledge. Dr. Rodriguez suggested the possibility of elaborate research by the family, but Jennifer provided phone records and internet history, proving they had never searched for information about Dr. Mitchell or even knew of his existence before Tommy began making his claims. Dr. Chen proposed the possibility of cryptomnesia, the psychological phenomenon where forgotten memories surface and feel like new experiences. But this theory failed to explain how Tommy could know details that were never publicly available, and memories that existed only in the minds of Dr. Mitchell's closest colleagues. The discussion turned to the possibility of fraud or coaching, but the doctors realized that even they didn't know all the details Tommy had provided. Some of the information he shared was so personal and specific that it would have been impossible for anyone outside Dr. Mitchell's immediate family to know, and his family had moved to another state shortly after his death. Dr. Williams mentioned recent studies in consciousness research and cases documented by universities where children claimed memories of past lives with verifiable details. She spoke about Dr. Ian Stevenson's work at the University of Virginia, where thousands of cases had been investigated with rigorous scientific methodology. Some cases had shown compelling evidence that challenged conventional understanding of consciousness and memory. Dr. Foster, still visibly shaken, admitted that his materialist worldview was being challenged in ways he never expected. As a man of science, he had always dismissed claims of reincarnation and past life memories as superstition or fraud. But Tommy's knowledge was undeniably real and impossible to explain through conventional means. The meeting took an unexpected turn when Dr. Santos suggested they visit Dr. Mitchell's old office, which had remained locked since his death. If Tommy truly had Dr. Mitchell's memories, he should be able to describe the office's contents in detail. The hospital administration had kept the office sealed, and only Dr. Rodriguez had the key. As they walked through the hospital corridors toward Dr. Mitchell's office, Tommy moved with familiarity that unnerved the adults. He navigated the complex layout without hesitation, pointing out changes that had been made since Dr. Mitchell's death. He mentioned that a water fountain had been moved, that new artwork had been hung in the third-floor hallway, and that the flooring in the cardiac wing had been replaced. When they reached Dr. Mitchell's office, Dr. Rodriguez hesitated before inserting the key. The door opened to reveal a space that had been preserved exactly as Dr. Mitchell had left it 3 years ago. Tommy walked in confidently and immediately pointed to specific items, describing their significance with emotional depth that seemed impossible for a child his age. He touched the ceramic owl on the bookshelf and mentioned that Dr. Mitchell's daughter Lucy had been so proud when she gave it to him, explaining that she had chosen the owl because her daddy was wise like an owl. He looked at the family photograph and shared memories of the beach vacation, describing the sandcastle competition and the sunburn Dr. Mitchell had gotten because he forgot to reapply sunscreen. Tommy's behavior in the office was perhaps the most convincing evidence yet. He moved around the space with the familiarity of someone who had spent countless hours there, automatically reaching for the light switch in the exact right location and settling into the desk chair as if it were his own. He even mentioned that the chair squeaked when turned to the left, a detail that Dr. Santos confirmed with a visible shudder. The emotional impact on the doctors was profound as they watched Tommy interact with Dr. Mitchell's personal belongings. The boy picked up a medical journal and mentioned that Dr. Mitchell had been reading an article about minimally invasive cardiac procedures the night before his death. He described Dr. Mitchell's notes in the margins and his plans to implement new techniques in his surgical practice. Perhaps most moving was when Tommy found a letter in the desk drawer that Dr. Mitchell had been writing to his wife but never finished. The letter expressed his love for his family and his concerns about balancing his demanding career with his role as a husband and father. Tommy read portions of the letter aloud, his young voice conveying emotions that seemed to come from deep personal experience. The investigation continued for several more hours as the doctors tested Tommy's knowledge with increasingly obscure questions about Dr. Mitchell's life and career. The boy answered each question with details that could only have come from direct personal experience. He knew about private conversations, personal fears, professional aspirations, and intimate family moments that no outside person could possibly have learned. Dr. Chen found herself reconsidering everything she thought she knew about consciousness, death, and the nature of human experience. As a scientist, she had been trained to seek rational explanations for all phenomena, but Tommy's case seemed to transcend the boundaries of conventional scientific understanding. The other doctors struggled with similar conflicts between their scientific training and the undeniable evidence before them. Dr. Rodriguez admitted that if someone had told him this story, he would have dismissed it immediately. But experiencing it firsthand had shaken his fundamental beliefs about the nature of consciousness and what happens after death. As the day concluded, the medical team faced the challenge of documenting their findings and determining how to proceed. Tommy's case represented either an extraordinary example of reincarnation or a phenomenon that science had yet to understand. Either possibility had profound implications for their understanding of human consciousness and the continuity of identity beyond physical death. The boy's mother, Jennifer, expressed her relief that medical professionals had finally witnessed her son's unusual abilities firsthand. She had struggled for months with Tommy's claims, unsure whether to seek psychological help or to consider the possibility that her son might actually be remembering a previous life. The doctors agreed to continue studying Tommy's case while maintaining strict confidentiality to protect the family's privacy. They planned to consult with researchers who specialized in reincarnation studies and to document their findings with the rigor and objectivity that such an extraordinary case demanded. Dr. Foster, who had been the most skeptical at the beginning of the day, admitted that Tommy's knowledge of Dr. Mitchell was so comprehensive and accurate that conventional explanations seemed inadequate. The experience had opened his mind to possibilities he had never seriously considered and had given him a new perspective on the mysteries of human consciousness. As the meeting finally ended, Tommy looked up at the doctors with his wise, ancient eyes and thanked them for listening to him. He said he felt better now that adults believed him and understood that his memories were real. The simple gratitude of a 7-year-old boy somehow made the extraordinary nature of his claims even more compelling. The case of Tommy and his memories of Dr. David Mitchell would continue to challenge and inspire the medical team at St. Mary's Hospital. It represented a profound reminder that despite all of humanity's scientific advances, there are still mysteries about consciousness, identity, and the nature of existence that science has yet to fully understand or explain. What started as a routine pediatric consultation had become one of the most compelling cases of apparent reincarnation that any of the doctors had ever encountered. Tommy's impossible knowledge of Dr. Mitchell's life and death would continue to influence their understanding of consciousness and force them to consider possibilities beyond their conventional medical training. The story of the boy who remembered being a doctor would spread quietly through certain scientific circles, adding to the growing body of evidence that suggests human consciousness might be far more complex and enduring than mainstream science currently acknowledges. And somewhere in the mystery of Tommy's memories, the legacy of Dr. David Mitchell lived on, challenging our understanding of life, death, and what it truly means to be human. If this incredible story of past life memories and impossible knowledge has left you questioning everything you thought you knew about consciousness and death, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more mind-bending mysteries that challenge the boundaries of science and human understanding. Your support helps us continue investigating the most extraordinary cases that prove reality is far stranger than we ever imagined.